You know, when I was watching the trailer for this movie, I thought to myself, only Nicolas Cage would make a movie where he's playing himself and he's reminding us about how we all loved him at some point during his career. Not that he went anywhere. I also thought to myself, only Nicolas Cage would make a movie where not only is he playing himself, but he's playing a completely different version of himself, which is like an actor alter ego, which I'm honestly convinced is very real after this movie. I truly think he has this ego in his head of somewhere, always telling him what to do, when to take roles and things like that. I think for a fact, I actually know for a fact that that has to be true. And of course, while watching this trailer for this movie, I can only think to myself, of course Nicolas Cage would make a movie about himself and call this movie The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. Hey guys, it's your guy in the chair here, and this is my review for The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, starring Nicolas Cage, Ike Barinholtz, Tiffany Haddish, and Pedro Pascal, and was directed by Tom Gormican. And basically, it stars Nicolas Cage playing Nicolas Cage, going through his everyday life where he's trying to essentially find his next role, and it eventually ends up with him wanting to quit acting. He just feels like he's not getting the respect he deserves anymore, not getting the roles that he wants, and he's just, he's honestly done with the whole Hollywood shebang. And then he gets this invitation from Pedro Pascal to go to his birthday party, where there he actually befriends Pedro. They actually get this very, very intriguing, very awesome friendship going, and then at that point, the CIA, agents played by Tiffany Haddish and Ike Barinholtz, they end up, infiltrating Cage and telling him that that Pedro Pascal actually ends up being an arms dealer, and now Nicolas Cage has to work for the CIA and eventually, essentially stop arms dealers from doing their arms dealing. So that's the plot. And with how wacky that plot sounds, guys, this movie is actually amazing. Like, I walked out of this movie having so much more fun than not only I thought I was going to have, I felt like I walked out having more fun than I was supposed to have. Like, this movie was just absolutely incredible from start to finish. But let me get my two cents off about Nick Cage first. So for me, Nick Cage was always a very good actor, or essentially, I always thought he was a very talented actor. He just sometimes chose roles where he decided to be very wacky and wonky, and he honestly lost me after probably Ghost Rider: Spirit of Vengeance. Once that movie came out, I feel like I started to watch less and less Nick Cage, just because I felt like he was just phoning it in at that point. I didn't think he was really doing anything, seriously anymore, but he's done so many movies like Con Air, Kick-Ass, National Treasure, and he's done so many movies I didn't realize he was in. I didn't know what to expect from this movie, and what we get is not only an ode to Nicolas Cage, and like, honestly, it's not only an ode to Nicolas Cage and how much we loved him in movies, but it's an ode to just movies in general and why we actually go to the theaters and what makes us, sit there. And not only that, but it also shows just what actors go through in order to, make a name for themselves and, become something, and, what it takes to actually last in Hollywood. Like, Nicolas Cage, this movie honestly made me kind of feel like I didn't really give Nicolas Cage the chance like he deserved. Like I said, after Ghost Rider: Spirit of Vengeance, I kind of just wrote Nicolas Cage off to just doing, whatever kind of movies. And he released so much more after that, and it's like, he addresses this in the movie too. Like, people wanted him to stop making movies, like, let the people miss you for a minute, and he addresses that in the film, and it's amazing because it's like he's been listening to all the criticisms that's been said about him over the years, and it just all comes out in this movie. And it's like he understood the criticisms, and it's like he didn't care what the criticisms were. He still did his thing anyway, but he was listening to the point where he wants to get his side of the story off now, and that's what this movie is. And I'm honestly probably describing more of a heartfelt story, which it definitely is. But this is essentially a comedy at the end of the day, and it's absolutely hilarious. Like, Nicolas Cage gave a performance that was honestly unbelievable. It's one of his best performances in years, and I mean years. But he's playing himself, but for Nick Cage to really play himself, he's playing a guy who I believe is very misunderstood in Hollywood, or essentially a guy who I once thought was crazy lunatic and just honestly was just phoning stuff in. Like, couldn't even, really give a good performance anymore. He went from that to me leaving this theater just feeling like he was Hollywood's most misunderstood actors. He still is to this day. He's just a guy who, people they look at him and they think he's crazy and he's doing all these other antics and he's just not there all the way. That's just who Nick Cage is. And he's honestly very, very talented. Nick Cage and Adam Sandler are two guys I put in the genius category for this reason and this reason only. These guys can do such bad performances in movies, but they can also turn around and do things that'll completely knock you off your socks or not just completely shock you. And Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent is that for Nick Cage, but he's done other movies. Uncut Gems was what that was for Adam Sandler, where he showed his true genius and that he could actually act, and he's not just this comedian comical guy. And Nick Cage, I believe, they both belong in that same category. And this movie honestly resembles just everything you loved about Nick Cage, and it goes down memory lane, and he references himself a lot. Like I said, there's movies I honestly didn't even realize he was in that he was in. And it's like, there's so many movies that he's in, like there's so many movies that he's in that you forget about all the other ones he was in. Like, I love Into the Spider-Verse. And Nicolas Cage plays Noir Spider-Man, one of the best characters in the movie, and you kind of forget that that's him for a little bit. Like, it's just so many things that he's been in that you overlook, and it's just like, he's had a phenomenal career, just a lot of bumps in the road, and he just takes the time in this movie to really explain where that all came from, and just his love of film and his love of working, and not necessarily treating this he treats it like a job, but he treats it like, a 9 to 5 where he's showing up every day to continue to make movies and make movie magic and cinema that people love. And I can't be mad at the guy for that. Like, this movie really made me see Nicolas Cage in a whole different light. Before I go too deep into the whole Nick Cage, thing where I feel like I'm praising him a lot, which he definitely earns all the praise. But before I continue to go down that Nick Cage path, I just want to give a shout out to Pedro Pascal for giving a phenomenal performance. First of all, the friendship between these two, like it's baffling how much it actually worked in the movie. Pedro Pascal, for me, is a good actor. I really think he's a good actor. He's just been a guy who has just taken roles where they've kind of thrown me off to his spiel a little bit. Like Kingsman 2 and Equalizer 2, his villain roles in those movies, I just really felt like his villain role in Equalizer 2 was just, it could have been anybody. It didn't have to be Pedro Pascal. They just needed a name there. They decided to put him there. He didn't really need to be in that movie. That villain could have been played by anybody. And what I mean by that is he didn't do a very good job in it. The Kingsman 2, my issue with that was just I felt like they were trying to juggle too many tones in that movie, and Pedro Pascal was one of them. So he's just been a victim of either just bad writing or just getting casted in roles where they just try to do too much with that character, and it didn't really pay off. In this movie, he does it's like a redemption tour for Pedro Pascal. I loved him so much in this movie. Like, he was funny. Like I said, the friendship between these two is so heartwarming, and you're just enjoying watching these two hang out. And look, I've seen so many Paddington jokes at this point. I've got to watch these Paddington movies and watch a review, because they watch Paddington in this movie, and apparently makes you, according to Pedro Pascal, it makes you want to be a better man. I got to figure out what the hell this bear is talking about, because apparently that is the most popular thing in the world. But back to the movie. Another actor I definitely want to give a shout out to in this movie is Sharon Hogan. She plays his wife. I believe Nick Cage's wife in the movie. I believe her name is Olivia. But she does a phenomenal job in this movie too. And the reason I want to give her such a shout out is because she's from another one of my favorite comedies, Game Night. And I just feel like she does not get enough credit, or she's not talked about at all in the performances that she gives in these movies. And she is honestly, she's a gem. I hope she's in a lot more comedies to come. I hope she's in a lot more movies. She just starts to stand out a little bit more, because she does a good job in a lot of the things she's in, and I just enjoy her a ton. But we're going back to Nick Cage. I think for me, what really deemed Nick Cage as talented in my eyes was his performance in Face Off. I think after that movie, where he just played the wackiest guy possible, but was able to mellow it out with John Travolta at the same time, like he was able to play two opposite sides of the fence. And, Travolta did a good job too, but essentially not as good as, Nicolas Cage did. Nicolas Cage absolutely kills Face Off. If you've ever seen Face Off, you know what that means, or you know what I mean. But like I said, this movie, he really just resembles, that genius actor that I always thought was in there, just hiding and, putting himself away. And like I said in my intro, he does play like well, it's one version of himself. It's like this actor ego of his that he has that I truly believe is real. Like that, like some of the roles that he's taken, or some of the performances he's done, or some of the places he's had to go to give the performances he's given, I believe this actor ego of his was right there giving him all the advice in the world. Like, you'll understand it when you see the movie. This guy, like, I believe this guy is real. I believe this is all based off of real events that Nick Cage has gone through at some point in his life. Not necessarily like being invited to a birthday party, having to work for the CIA type thing. I know that's probably in the fictional part, but a lot of this has to do with his life and a lot of things that he's been going through just internally and externally. And like I said, I enjoy this movie way more than I was supposed to. Like, I resembled with Nick Cage, and honestly, his passion for movies and his passion for the art of film, it just flows right off the screen. Like, it's beautiful to see. And this was in the trailer, one of his favorite lines in the movie, when he's asked what's his favorite movie, he's like, that's a loaded question. It's like, that's the perfect answer. It's like Nick Cage understands what film is supposed to be. He understands what it is, and he does his best to resemble that in everything he does. And it's like, this movie made me realize that I just wasn't appreciating that enough. And it's not even like it's making you feel bad about it, but it's just taking you down a trip to memory lane to remember like how much Nick Cage actually gave to the 100+ years of cinema, and how much he actually, affected it. Like, to this day, National Treasure is still a very memeable movie. Like, and it's a lasting movie. And just because it's memeable, I think the memeable movies are the ones that are going to last the longest, essentially. But it's just, nobody's really going to forget those performances that he's done. And I'm pretty sure if you go down any movie, ask any movie buff, go down memory lane with anybody who's watched a ton of movies, you bring up Nick Cage, they're going to have some sort of story about him. I just love how self-aware this movie is and how much he's just, praising. I feel like some of the stuff where other people are kind of like praising Nick Cage and going, oh my God, Nick Cage is fucking awesome. He's a legend. He's this, he's that. I feel like he wrote a lot of that stuff for himself, or maybe people just really think that himself. But Nick Cage is, in fact, a legend. And I was thoroughly impressed with this performance, and I was thoroughly shocked about how much I love this movie. Like, the more I think about it, the more it sits with me. Not only was it phenomenally funny, but I just feel like it's so much more than that. It's so much more than just talking about the funny parts and the comedy. There's an actual story here. There's heart here. Nick Cage is trying to share his genuine experience with you, and I got the message, Mr. Cage. You got me on board completely. I loved everything about this movie. Look, I'm going to say it. The runtime was perfect. I have no problems with this movie, guys. This movie was solid. Now, you'll see my review in a second, and I'll explain it. But I enjoyed everything about this movie. I have no issues with it. The runtime is perfect. It's an hour, 47 minutes. Look, we're in, we're out. We're having a good time. It's not like essentially boring in any ways. It's not, it doesn't get flat in any areas. The movie really balances the tones of, especially when he's doing the CIA stuff and he's trying to, infiltrate the Pedro Pascal's place. It's balancing the two tones of the movie very well. Like, it's really creating just one very smooth ride, and you're getting through it. And I enjoyed this movie a lot. I just can't say that enough. So overall, guys, look, I think this movie is absolutely phenomenal. It's definitely one of my favorite movies of the year. I had such a good time watching it. I was honestly floored. Like I said, I was just honestly floored about how much I enjoyed this movie. Like, I couldn't believe it. I was sitting there at the end as the credits were rolling. And, of course, Neil Patrick Harris is in this movie. Who doesn't love Neil Patrick Harris? Barney Stinson is a top 5 sitcom character of all time, if you haven't noticed. But it has just so many different characters, and it's just so many. Everybody's having fun with this movie. Nicolas Cage is just, he's a standout, man. He honestly, like, there was a lot of buzz for this movie when it first came out, and it was good buzz, of course, but like I didn't know how to take that, only because it's like, all right, is this movie just super funny? Like, what is it at the end of the day if he's just playing himself? And he's playing himself to tell a story, and it's a story that I feel like we all need to listen to, especially if you grew up watching Nicolas Cage movies, or if you grew up appreciating Nick Cage or liking Nick Cage. He was one of your favorite actors. And honestly, this is because I fell into this category as well. For people who feel like, Nicolas Cage fell out of their favorite actor, or he just got written off by you at some point, which I did. I wrote him off at some point. I didn't really watch too many Nick Cage movies, like I said, after Ghost Rider: Spirit of Vengeance, which honest, like, this movie didn't make me, go back and say, oh my god, Ghost Rider: Spirit of Vengeance was a good movie, because it's absolutely not. But it did make me appreciate the dedication and the actual work that he put into these roles. It did make me do that, and I really appreciate that. And for all those reasons and so many more, guys, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, for me, is a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Look, I do understand I kept saying, this movie is phenomenal, it's great, it's this, it's that, and I have no issues with the movie at all. All of those are true. I just couldn't give it a 5. A 5 for me, you'll see. You'll see. When I give a movie a 5, I'll go ahead and break down that. I am going to do a rating video at some point. I keep saying that I should do that sooner rather than later, but a 4.5 out of 5 stars ain't that bad. It's actually very good. It's very good. It's very good. The movie is very good. I feel like everybody should go check it out. All right, guys, thank you so much. All right, so The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. Have you seen it? What's your favorite Nick Cage movie? Look, let's get a discussion going down in those comments down below. Please be sure to like, subscribe. Guys, thank you so much for watching. This is your guy in the chair. I'm out.